Hello, my wonderful, beautiful friends, guys. Welcome back to our /EntitledPeople, where you know the deal. People think they can do what they want, when they want, and the world revolves around them. And in today's episode, it's all about bad neighbors. So if you've ever had the displeasure of living by a nightmare neighbor, this one's for you. I hope you enjoy the stories, don't shake your heads too hard, and as always, you can send or link your post to this email right here. Let's dive in. So, this old lady that lives 2 down from me bought early in our neighborhood. There were 2 empty lots by her, and it's a golf course community. Her property, however, only backs into some woods between holes. I bought the property 2 down that sits on the green. Now, she could see the green when the lots were empty, but after the houses were built, she could see less, but she could still see. The lot between us sold and a family moved in. They and us have 5 little kids. We both had the builder put in a fence. The fence was installed into the buffer zone between the golf course and our property owned by the HOA. Almost every other house in the neighborhood has a fence or bushes in the buffer. It mostly exists for drainage. The only rule is no structures in it. So as I've said, me and the other new house have a few kids each. They play outside, much less than I did their age, but they do play some. Well, Lady Karen is pissed, apparently, that we built houses in the empty lots in the half-finished subdivision. She accuses us and says that we stole land for our fence. She also thinks that she's entitled to quiet country living on a 0.2-acre lot. So with that, she starts harassing me and my neighbor. First, it was little things. She reported me to the HOA for something in my backyard, which puzzled me. She also called the cops because the kids were playing outside together at 3 p.m. on a Saturday. And then she filed a complaint against our realtor. The neighbor on her other side abruptly moved. Probably another story there. She really took it out on the wife next door though. She was afraid of the husband, however. They end up getting a restraining order, but Lady Karen does not stop. She walked into their yard and filmed them through their windows. That got her arrested and charged with a felony. She was then offered a deal if she'd sell and move. She wouldn't take it though, and out on bail, she started screaming at the kids in the backyard again. So the bail was revoked, and she's in jail. The house is now for sale. Some people just can't let things go, can they? Like, what a mistake on Karen's part. Like, the woman was out on bail and she got thrown right back in there all because she can't control her mouth. And now she has to sell her house. And this person comments, I guarantee you she did not learn a single thing. Sitting in jail, she's seething over how all of you ruined her life for no reason. So my husband and I kept hearing a bang in the evening at random hours, between 6 and 10 p.m. It would wake us up sometimes or get our dogs going crazy. We had no idea what it was. I even called a plumber since we've had some plumbing issues in the past, and I didn't know what else it could be. Finally, the Ring camera caught something. It was a young boy, probably between ages 8 and 11, and he was running up and kicking our house, like hard. This bang was so loud that I thought it was our trash cans knocking into the house, or a bad plumbing issue. But a kid deciding to do karate kicks and then outrun my Ring camera while laughing his ass off was not what I expected. Okay, so I decide to do a few things. First, I put up a motion light, which I almost fell off a ladder doing and broke another light in the process. So between this and the plumber coming out, I'm out about $200 because of this kid. Second, I wrote a note and I taped it to the glass. The kid seemed tall enough to read, and the note said, "To the child kicking our door. We know who you are, and we have you on camera every time. We've told your parents, and we will contact the police next time. Please stop scaring our dogs." Now, I'm bluffing because I want him to stop, and I can't figure out his motive except to cause chaos in my household, so I needed to try to scare him. So the last 2 weeks, nothing. I figured my note and light worked, and the little kid was scared, so I took the note down last night. And then tonight, another bang, the loudest one yet. And I'm thinking, what the F? I go outside because I'm mad now. And I can see a children's mermaid ball in my front yard, and I'm keeping it. The little kid kicked it into my car. I see no kids, and I'm so angry. I kick the ball into my fenced backyard and go back inside. About 30 minutes goes by and I hear another bang. I look out the window and I see this little bastard running down the street laughing, and I'm furious. Now, I'm about the size of Sydney Sweeney. I'm wearing cute polka dot PJs, and I just did my everything shower with an at-home blowout, and I'm in no mood. I push my husband out of the way, and I put my running sneakers on with no socks. I then open the door, and I book it down the street after this kid. I can see the kid running inside a house. I run up the driveway, and I kindly question some younger girls, who I assume are his sisters, to find out where the parents were. They said mom was in the backyard. So I went back there, and I told her straight up, your son's been kicking my house almost every night for 2 months. I have it on video. He's scaring my dogs. Ask him to stop. She just said, okay, thank you. I said thank you and left. As I walked home, I could see my husband running up to me because he didn't know where I went. I told him, don't worry, I handled it. Then, as if on cue, I hear the loud whining of what sounds like a young boy between 8 and 11 finally getting justice served. And the thing is, I've never met this kid in my life. I want to know why. Why did he target us? Did I wrong him? Was it just some random crazy kid doing whatever he wants? Sometimes life is chaos. I absolutely love how OP handled this, and I'm not gonna lie guys, I would have done the exact same thing. Though I don't think I would have let it go on for 2 months. Like every night for 2 months, I'd be going insane after the first week. And another thing, thank goodness the mom recognized that what her son was doing was wrong here. Because with all the Karen story I read, the moms always side with their kids. He's my angel, how can he do wrong? With that said though, OP did find out what was going on. They posted an update saying, this crap is called the door kick challenge on TikTok. Thank you to the comment who said that their HOA mentioned it in their newsletter. For once, I don't have the urge to fistfight the HOA. What's better than calling the cops on your sweet little old neighbor's heroin addict grandson for stealing your Amazon package? Well, in July, my elderly neighbor had her grandson and pregnant girlfriend move in to help them out. She's a widowed lady in her 70s and she babbles a lot, but she's sweet. I have a sweet spot for her. Years ago, she caught me as I was leaving to take my dog on a walk. My dog was unhappily pacing, waiting for the walk, while we listened to her stories. He peed on her during the story, but she's so senile she didn't notice. Just a few days later, I'm mowing my backyard, and the grandson walks past my house carrying an Amazon envelope, which is weird. About an hour later, the sweet old lady comes over with the envelope her grandson had. She said, this was in my landscaping. I totally forgot that I ordered a children's movie for my kids. What a crappy haul for this kid. See, I'm a criminal defense attorney. I'm probably the only one this lady knows. If I call the cops, my neighbor will try to hire me. It'll get weird. She's so sweet. I will be a witness. He's on probation, so he'll sit in jail for a while. And this will totally make me look like a snitch to my own clients in that same jail, who are thieves, addicts, and burglars. It's bad personally and professionally, and it's not the biggest deal. So with that, I fill up an Amazon box with this thing called purple rain powder that was ordered to my office. It's a dry dye that gets darker and spreads when it comes in contact with your sweat. That lasts a week on your skin. Think leaking pen times 50. And why would I want to do this? Well, I want to shame him and it won't come back on me. The guy's not gonna call the cops for stealing my stuff and then turning blue. He also isn't going to tell his grandma that he stole from me. And if it makes a mess in her house, it's still cheaper than her hiring a lawyer and paying her grandson's court costs and fines. And just as I thought, the package was gone in 20 minutes. I walk past the home and I can hear screams of anger at the pregnant girlfriend. He's screaming, this crap won't come off. It's all over my grandma's house. It was absolutely priceless. The following day, I give him the head nod as he smokes a cigarette in a hoodie in July. He runs inside. Then, I taught my kids to yell Smurf when we walk past. No snitching, just shame. Absolutely brilliant how OP handled that neighbor. And employing his kids to call him a Smurf was the icing on the cake, guys. Like, I wondered how that kid explained that to grandma. Oh, I stole a package, grandma, and it turned out to be a trap. And that don't F with me head nod though, frickin' savage. So a bit about me is I just want peace and quiet and to be left alone. I'm in my late 20s and I live alone, and I really hate kids. My neighborhood is a group of separate houses without yards that are spaced close to each other. I've lived here for 5 years by myself, and it's absolutely perfect. It's everything I've ever wanted. No yards to take care of, and no kids running around making noise. The houses share a large T-shaped cement driveway, and none of us have ever interacted with each other. We come and go, stay quiet, and mind our own business. There's a small park down the street with grass for those who want it, literally a 30-second walk away. With that said, about a year ago, a guy with a lot of kids moved into my neighborhood. As always, I just drove past him like everyone else and closed my garage. I never spoke to him, which was no problem. Over time, he started making himself at home. The guy would park his large truck in the motor court, which has a sign saying it's illegal because it's a fire lane. He would also block his neighbor's garage across from him. The guy would set up lawn chairs in front of his neighbor's garage, and then have his little kids out there running and screaming right in front of people's houses, so we would have to listen to it. He would also rev his motorcycle at 8 a.m. on Saturday and wake up the whole neighborhood. When his kids would be blocking the driveway, they would take their sweet time moving. Because of this, I did one simple thing. When I would come home every day and drive past and around them, I wouldn't wave back when he waved at me, and oh, how that hurt his pride. He should have left it at that, but no, the guy had to press the issue. So he starts waving even more, and then shouting at me as I drive past. And if that wasn't enough, he starts telling his kids to stop and stand and wave at me, as I always drove past and ignored them all. Until eventually, he didn't like how I drove around his kids that were in the way, so he tried to confront me. The guy jumps in front of my car, so I had to stop, and he shouts at my car. I told him to move, and then he did. Then he came to my garage, so I closed it right in his face without me ever looking at him. The guy didn't like that, so immediately he walks to my front door. He saw that I had a doorbell camera, so he turned around and walked away. A couple of days later, coming home, he was crossing the driveway as I arrived. And because he had told his kids to stop and wave at me, the idiot stopped in the middle, so he stood in my way to block my car while trying to get the kid to move. So I honked for 3 seconds right in his face until he moved. That was our last interaction, and I decided that he's annoyed me enough. I live in an HOA, and I don't care about any of the rules, but I decided to use them all to report him endlessly for every violation I knew of, using my dash cam on the car for screenshots with evidence. His parking in the motor court stopped after they gave him a ticket, and he had to throw out the child's playhouse he had set up next to his garage. I kept reporting him for having an open garage door that I don't actually care about, in order to get him to stop hanging out in the motor court and to use his brain and to take his kids down the street to the park. It only took 4 months of reporting him repeatedly, and the guy just moved out. You know what, some people do argue that OP is the Karen in this one, and she should have left the guy alone. But I don't know, some of the stuff that guy was doing was super entitled, like blocking people's driveways, blaring music, letting his kids run wild in the streets, annoying other neighbors. I'm just gonna say, if people think OP's a Karen, she's one of the good ones for sure. That said though, did you guys catch the part where OP says it's a rule violation to have the garage door open? As if we all need another reason to hate HOAs. Like, what kind of stupid rule is that? So my wife and I were sitting on our front porch, hanging out with my little kitten outside after a long day at work. It was around 8 p.m. The kitty is playing in the snow nearby at the edge of our driveway, which connects to the road. Out of nowhere, a Ford pickup speeds by and swerves into our driveway, narrowly missing my scared kitty. That's when a skinny, younger guy jumps out of the driver's side, and he urgently walks towards the porch. His back was to the road, and he starts to fiddle with his zipper, and I'm thinking, no effing way, man. The guy hasn't seen us sitting there, so I shout, hoping he won't whip it out right there and take a leak in front of us. I think he may be a friend of our neighbors at first, because they're pretty trashy. This is when I raise my voice and say, hey man, who the F are you? You need to slow down, and what are you about to do? The a-hole sees us and says, oh, hey. The guy continues to unzip and do his business in front of us. I also notice that he's swaying awkwardly, probably drunk I think. So I tell him, "Look, idiot, there's kids that live here. You can't just expose yourself. Now get the F out before I call the cops." And this is when the drunk a-hole says, "Good, call 'em. I don't care." My wife says, "Fine, I don't have anything better to do at the moment." So my wife dials the non-emergency number to the station, less than 100 yards down the road, and she puts it on speaker so the a-hole can hear we're not bluffing. Somehow, after a virtual eternity, the dude's finally wrapping up his whiz, and he holsters his wizard finger at us. On the phone, my wife tells police that some guy sped into our driveway, barely missed our kitten, and he's exposing himself while probably drunk. The a-hole says, "Good, tell them my plate number is..." He then proceeds to say a random plate number, the guy slurring, and he stands there defiantly with his belt open. I walk a few steps so I can see his real plate number, and I read it aloud to my wife. At this point, the guy seems to slowly realize this is really happening, and with his pants unbuckled, he waddles quickly back to the driver's side and he peels down the road, swerving in the snow. My wife is still speaking to the police operator when badass police charger absolutely roars by, in what we assume is in response to our call. My wife ends the call and we resume our night and we just kind of chuckle it off. The next day, we call back to see if anything came of it in the end. Turns out, they got him just down the road. DUI, underage possession of alcohol, indecent exposure in a school zone, and reckless driving. We caught all the audio on our front doorbell camera, and we forwarded it to the officer in charge. They say it may help tack more charges on and will strengthen others. The moral is, if somebody warns you to move along, you'd better do it. Also, don't drive drunk, people. Nothing like instant justice, right? And I bet that kid regrets daring OP to call the cops once he's sobered up. But guys, I'm actually glad the kid told OP to call the cops, and OP's wife actually did, before the kid drove off and potentially injured himself or others. OP also pays the pet tax guys and shares a picture of their cat. Ain't that adorable? So for some background, I live in a predominantly white suburban town in New Jersey, and my family is Asian. Although the town is alright for the most part, it's not really a secret that some of the townspeople are pretty racist. One of our neighbors, let's call him Anthony, is a retired police captain from another town, but he's friends with my town's police chief. My mother is a first-generation immigrant, and although she's fluent in English, she still has a pretty thick Asian accent. So with that said, a couple of years ago, my mom went to visit one of her friends on the other side of town. My mom had parallel parked, directly in front of her friend's house, which is at the bottom of a small hill. As she was leaving, a woman driving a Jeep Wrangler with her kids was driving down the hill, but she was still a decent distance back, so my mom pulls out of her spot. The road they were on was really wide, with enough space to fit 5 cars next to each other, and about 40 feet ahead was a stop sign. My mom at this point was in the middle of the road, fully out of the parking spot, and she had gone about 10 feet when the woman driving the Jeep suddenly comes up from behind my mom's car and cuts directly in front of her, crossing a double yellow line to do so. Now, because of the angle she cut my mom off at, the Jeep's rear wheel ends up ripping off my mom's front bumper. My mom naturally stopped, and the woman gets out of her car after straightening it out on the road. As soon as my mom steps out of her car, this woman, who we'll call Karen, immediately starts cursing my mom out at the top of her lungs. Karen told my mom to call police, but my mom told her that her phone had died. At this point, my mom's friend and her son, as well as the neighbor, come out of the house after hearing the commotion to see what happened. The neighbor, an elderly man, asked what happened, and Karen yells, "Are you effing blind? An effing accident happened, old man, so go call the police. I need to call my boyfriend." The son had taken a law class in college, so he offered to take a bunch of pictures of the scene of the accident and send them to my mom later. This becomes super important. The neighbor calls the police, but Karen's boyfriend arrives at the scene first. When the cop, who we'll call Kenny, finally arrives, he asked my mom what happened, and just as my mom had started saying her side of the story, the cop says, "Wait a minute," and then walks over to the boyfriend. Well, as it turns out, the boyfriend, who we'll call Sam, was a cop in the town who was pretty popular with the kids in middle schools because he would occasionally visit to talk about things like Dare. Sam was off duty at the time, so he was able to come over when Karen called him. As soon as Kenny saw his buddy Sam, he immediately went to talk with him rather than my mom or with Karen. They discuss it for a little while, and afterward, they sent everyone on their way. My mom tried to talk to Kenny before he left, but Kenny just brushed it off and said he got all the details he needed and that my mom would be able to get the police report in about a week or two. Well, when my mom receives the police report, she saw that it said that she pulled out without using her blinkers suddenly, and she hit Karen's car. On top of that, Karen was expecting for my mom's insurance to pay for all the damage done to her vehicle. So with that, my mom went to my neighbor Anthony to ask what she should do about the report since it was clearly wrong. Anthony was furious and told her that she should go to the police station and ask to see the chief. And if they ask why she needs to see him, she should tell them that it's because she wants to file an internal complaint. That day, my mom takes the photographs sent to her by the son, and she goes to the police station and she asks the person working the front desk to see the chief. The cop says that she can't just walk in and ask for the chief. So my mom responds, "Okay, well, where should I go to file an internal complaint?" The cop immediately straightens up and says, "Right here, ma'am, come with me." After presenting the evidence to show that it was in fact Karen that hit her instead of the other way around, my mom also says that she would like to file a corruption complaint against both Kenny and Sam. Kenny clearly did not do his job properly since he did not properly ask the actual people involved in the accident, and he did not even note the fact that there were 2 passengers in Karen's car in the report. And the thing is, even Karen admitted to an investigator that Kenny never once spoke to her. Sam, meanwhile, had interfered with the investigation despite not being at the scene of the crime during the time of the accident. The chief says that he'll start an internal investigation and he'll see if anything needs to be done. Meanwhile, my mom also files a claim to her insurance and presented the evidence to them too. And her insurance decides that since the accident in their eyes was clearly not her fault, they weren't going to pay Karen a penny, and they would contact Karen's insurance to pay my mom instead. About a month passes, and that's when an officer comes to our house to tell my mom that Kenny had been punished, and he just wanted to know if there were any other concerns she had. Since Karen had seemingly not done anything to further warrant any action, and the damage to her car was paid for, my mom said there was nothing else. And this is the fun part. So 3 days after the officer comes to our door, a letter came in the mail for a court hearing. It turns out Karen decides to file 3 tickets about my mom, just 1 day before the statute of limitations. Apparently, in New Jersey, citizens are allowed to file complaints about other citizens breaking the law, which is a thing our family had never heard of before until this happened. And because of how late she filed these complaints, by the time we received them in the mail, we couldn't even counter the complaints. And the only other options were to pay the fine or to go to court. We assumed that Karen had learned about this from Sam, because no crap. And the only reason she was willing to go this far is because she heard my mom had a super thick Asian accent. And she assumed that my mom wouldn't know what to do about these tickets and she would just pay up. Well, what she didn't count on was the fact that my mom is actually really aggressive, with an absolutely massive network of people that she knows. Within a day, my mom hires a lawyer to fight the case, and they ask to change the court from the small court in our town to one of the large courts a couple of towns away. The logic was that if she fought the case in our town, my mom would be at a disadvantage, since her case was essentially going against our town's beloved police force. But by putting it in a different town, the playing field would be even. Additionally, while my mom worked from home in her own business, Karen had a full-time job in town, so going to court in a different town would be a huge pain for her. The lawyer prepared a huge amount of evidence against Karen, so there was no way that she was actually going to win this case no matter what. So come the court date, Karen never shows up, so the case was thrown out. Now that was a nice win, but what came after was even better. Since my mom and sister have a lot of friends in town, the story of Karen and Sam doing the shady BS got out really fast. Soon, half the town heard about it, and suddenly, Karen and Sam went from the 2 favorites in the town to 2 of the most underhanded and nasty people. Sam stopped getting invited to school assemblies, and Karen was ostracized in her kids' school PTA. Anthony also ended up talking to the police chief in private, and we found out that although Sam was not officially punished, he was severely reprimanded by the chief. What a frickin' fallout that was, guys. Like, imagine thinking that you're above the law because your boyfriend thinks he can pull strings, only for some innocent lady to come absolutely destroy them. And another thing, this is why people also need dash cams in their car. Like, a simple $100 dash cam would have saved all of this headache. Like, the whole thing would have ended before all of Karen's entitled BS began. And that, my friends, brings us to another end of r/entitled people. Guys, I hope you enjoyed today's stories. If you did, hit that thumbs up, and if you're not subscribed, consider subscribing so you don't miss these crazy stories. And if you missed the last episode on the channel, it's an r/malicious compliance, where a boss gets absolutely destroyed because she happens to think that OP is useless. Guys, go check it out if you haven't, and myself and Stevie Boy will see you guys in the next one. We love you.